Coming to you from a cozy little condo high atop Old 4th Ward, Atlanta. Welcome to The Ron Show on America One Radio. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
It's been a minute since I've had a chance to talk with this guy, and it's always fun when I have him on the show. George Chidi at the Atlanta Objective. Hey, man, it's my understanding you're looking for some freelance folks?
Yeah, I think it's time to take the Objective to another level. It's kind of been a one-man show for years, and like the world's on fire, and I'm finding myself with more stuff to write than time to write it.
Yeah.
So I need help. And if you're a writer, if you're in Atlanta, come find me. Like connect on the Objective. Send me a note. Tell me that you want to work with me, and I'm paying. I will pay a reasonable freelance wage, but more to the point, if you're trying to get involved in like how to be a freelancer, like 'cause I've been working on that for a long time, I can make my connections available to you.
That could be very valuable for somebody who's really looking to get a foothold in the constantly evolving world of journalism, and it is constantly evolving. You, I think, are sort of one of the canaries in the coal mine, so to speak. Going it your own way, on your own, without the resources of some large conglomerate or corporation or a large brand or anything like that. And you're showing that it's doable.
It is, but you really got to have a very strong connection to the community and a very clear voice. Like, you got to be writing about stuff that people want to read.
That's true. And on that note, I noticed in one of your most recent Substack pieces, you ventured to a town hall, a congressional town hall. And I thought it was kind of interesting that my congressman, Representative Nikema Williams, even did a town hall, because it's mostly just preaching to the choir in her congressional district. But I also sort of feel a little sympathetic to the folks like Representative Williams who are in the party and at the federal level serving in Congress and really don't have a whole lot of power to do anything, but they come back to their constituents to hear their constituents complain about them not being able to do anything anyway.
It's interesting. Like that town hall, some element of it is, and I reference this, like it's kind of a group therapy session.
Yeah.
The problem is there are a lot of folks there who are not interested in group therapy. They want to know what to do. Like I keep wondering at what point we're going to be in the street. And I think that moment is coming. Because Donald Trump is in the process of ignoring court orders. And if he's ignoring court orders, then the rule of law is questionable. And that's the point where I think the public needs to be disruptive. The problem, of course, is that a person in Congress can't be saying, yes, burn things down.
No.
Like, 'cause that's, yeah.
Yeah, but people are literally burning things down. They're burning Teslas down. They're burning Tesla charging stations down. They're firing bullets into Tesla dealerships. And not that anybody's condoning that, but it is, to me, that's sort of a little bit of a sign.
Yeah, that's a sign. The problem is everything is so you've got Howard Lutnick, who's the Secretary of Commerce, openly arguing, like saying people should go buy Tesla stock, which is like the conflict of interest there is unbelievable.
What the president selling them on the front lawn wasn't?
Right. Like the idea, like the nakedness of the corruption there is a sign of some really a fundamental breakdown in the relationship between the government and industry that, it is corrupting.
Yeah.
For all of the talk on the right about how they are an anti-corruption force looking for fraud, waste, and abuse. And then you're looking at this fraud, waste, and abuse. And I don't think things start to change until people on the right, until working class Republicans start to recognize just what's happening.
And that they're being affected. We're not just owning the libs anymore. We're owning rural, flyover state, MAGA voter areas with these government cuts, and when the tax cuts don't come to them as large as they do to the millionaire and billionaire class, I just happen to wonder of that 40, I'd say 35% of the American voter base. I don't know how many of them aren't completely enraptured in this cult groupthink.
Well, let me tell you, like this, it's easy to dismiss, this as cult groupthink. Mm-hmm. And I think it's more complicated than that. The most important thing is being able to look at what a regular Republican Trump voter, like their worldview, and then finding a way to convey the worldview of the typical Democratic voter to them, so that we can get back to a place where like sensible policy can be made. Because right now everybody's talking past each other. Mm-hmm. And I know it's like, oh, you should try to understand Republicans more. It sucks, but that's the truth. We need to do that. From their perspective, they really believe that things, especially like Medicare and Medicaid and social services in general, and anything that looks charitable that's coming out of the government, is being stolen. That it's not working, it's not effective, that it's being stolen, that people are engaging in fraud. And a lot of this is sort of tied up in Reagan-era welfare queen, sort of nonsense.
Racially tinged.
But it's what that it is. But there it is. They don't think their own folks are conducting any of that sort of stuff, or maybe they do, but that's what they think is what's happening. And that, so surely, of the trillions of dollars that the government spends, some large percentage of it must be fraud. Because if it wasn't, why wouldn't the world be better than it is? And it's going to take contact with what happens when Medicaid gets cut, mm-hmm. when roads start getting paved because the federal government has cut the budget for transportation spending, mm-hmm. when, as we're seeing, planes are flying out, not like we're seeing plane crashes, because of air traffic controller issues. Yeah. That's an oversimplification, by the way. But you get my point. They've got to feel it before they're going to start changing. But I think that's going to happen sooner rather than later. Some number of them are willing to accept less in order to achieve what they believe is a policy goal.
Yeah. And I've always maintained that's a little bit of a baked-in white privilege. I tell people all the time, if you've never been marginalized, you have the white privilege, I believe, of believing that it's okay to think in a libertarian mindset. Yes, we'd all like limited government, but until we have limited marginalization, we can't have limited government. That's just my thought, my premise.
So some of the things that are going to start happening right now, if they actually go through with the cuts that they're talking about, without raising taxes on billionaires, as they probably should at this point, right. You're going to see a bunch of people get thrown out of personal care homes and nursing homes.
Yeah.
And you've got families, and most of the folks who are in there are white and poor. And you're going to see a bunch of families having to absorb people out of personal care homes in ways that they can't afford.
Yeah.
And then there will be a hue and a cry. That's part of it. Rural hospitals closing means jobs go away in rural parts of the state, which means people who've got, a factory job working at Kia, out in southwest Georgia, and suddenly the Kia plant's got to relocate because they can't maintain because there isn't a proper hospital in the area, that sort of thing. I think we're already starting to see pieces of that with these battery plants pulling out of Georgia.
Yeah.
The writing's on the wall,
and the change in tone and tenor on energy and whether we go with the green direction or the drill baby drill direction. I think they just see the writing on the wall there.
There are things I'm sort of working on One of them is looking at the poultry industry. For all of the talk about ICE rounding up undocumented migrants who are working here, like they've left Hall County alone for the most part. And it's because there's a political element to chicken right now.
Yeah.
But at some point, if they're actually serious about it, and this is more than just, populist flag waving, they're going to go after the guys who are running chicken. And I've always said that if Republicans were serious about immigration, they would be jailing employers.
Yes, I've said that for years. If you don't like stray cats on your front porch, you don't leave kibble out on it.
Yeah,
that's the long and the short of it.
But there's no interest in holding hiring managers and operations managers at Purdue accountable.
Yeah,
and they'll say, "Oh no, all our people are documented," and it's bullshit.
Yeah, it's.
Oh,
paperwork.
I'm sorry, I just swore on you.
You're fine. Go with it. No, you're right. You're right. It's the middle level HR person can't go to jail for doing what their employer told them to do, and you can't jail Purdue. You can fine them, but what do they care?
Oh, you can jail them. You can actually take a manager and put them in jail for this shit. It is they just won't do it.
No,
because they don't want to take the economic hit.
Yeah.
And so it's hypocrisy, but. Okay, I think the right accepts hypocrisy. What they won't accept is a degree of financial degradation, which is what I think is coming. Anyway,
no,
the thing with Akima Williams, there is a Democratic Party meeting that has been scheduled for Saturday the 29th,
right,
to rewrite the bylaws for the Democratic Party of Georgia,
right.
That meeting is going to be out in Oglethorpe County someplace. My understanding is that the question about whether or not Nikema Williams will remain the head of the party in Georgia is going to be resolved at that meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And she may very well be stepping down. That might be the thing. Where they put somebody else up there.
Whether they address the bylaws or not.
Right.
Okay.
And part of this is because, I'm at that town hall meeting, and I'm in a room full of people going, "We want to fight. Mm-hmm. Please lead us in the fight."
Mm-hmm.
And Nikema Williams is very, very much saying, "Look, there are only some things I can tell you from my official account as, a congresswoman, and you have to follow these two accounts in order to get the other side from the political side because she is unwilling to break the law, which is good. But I think there are questions being raised about whether or not she should be in that position in the first place.
Yeah.
Whether or not whoever should be leading the party and leading whatever kind of resistance we need should also be an elected official.
1,000%. And they're both full-time jobs. In fact, they're beyond full-time jobs. They're jobs, they're 60-hour week jobs. And we, at the state level, for sure, we need somebody who's minding the shop. And I don't think you can do both when you're working in Washington and serving your constituency. I was stumbling into this thought bubble that hit me the other day, watching the whole Andre Dickens saga here in Atlanta. And it hit me. What's happening with Andre Dickens and Atlanta Beltline Rail, to me, epitomizes why Democrats only have 27% favorability with the American public. Because Democrats have the better ideas, the ideology, the party platform that I think a broad majority of this country agree with, if you strip away the labels anyway. It's the follow-through, the delivery that Democrats fall well short on. And Andre Dickens has kicked the can down the road a lot longer, past his mayorship anyway, when it comes to delivering on rail in Atlanta. And now it's a lot less likely. Now, I don't say that because I want to have a conversation about Beltline Rail necessarily, but do you see the correlation?
Yeah, very much so. If everything's screwed up and Democrats have some power and they're not using it to unscrew things, then I think people can make some very reasonable. Sorry about that in the background.
You're good.
I think people can make some very reasonable inferences about how useful their vote is in general and how useful Democrats are in specific.
Yeah.
The Beltline Rail thing is, I actually have some sympathy bearing in mind I am a strong supporter of Beltline Rail.
Mm-hmm.
I have some sympathy for where the mayor is on all of this. He was getting pushed back politically from politically powerful, financially well-heeled, opposition.
Oh, yeah.
And if they were going to stay on track, then they were going to be tearing some of that stuff up and working on it just as the World Cup descends on Atlanta next year. And, I think he's sort of gaming out what that's going to look like. I understand that, politics is about serving multiple constituencies. I'm sympathetic. I think he made them. I would have made a different decision, but I get it.
But the next excuse will be the Super Bowl or the college football champion. There's always going to be a next big thing in Atlanta, and you can't schedule around that. You just can't.
Oh, I see that. Yeah, I mean, it's just World Cup is a sort of it's a qualitatively different beast.
I know it's not the Olympics, but it's almost at that level. No, you're right.
He's got some other stuff going on though, like this corruption thing that's going on with the IG's report, and they want to downplay that. And I've been talking to people quietly about at City Hall about their thoughts, and I've never heard the kind of personal vilification of somebody like an inspector general as I am hearing now. They are very personally. But when you drill down into what she was saying, so there's enough there for the alarms to ring. It's not maybe some of that gets dismissed. Maybe some of it, once it's proper, when the FBI looks at it, we'll go yeah, that's not enough for us to take action on. Some of it probably is. And Dickens has, up till now, been viewed as an honest broker who hasn't been where we've moved past the historical corruption at the city, and suddenly this thing is popping up. And oh no. The irony is, I don't think that there's anybody who's going to run on him that's got a shot at it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I don't see anybody stepping up to run against him. But no, the corruption, I hate to use the word without evidence or any allegations, being bantied about or any evidence coming out. But
I think there's enough to talk about.
But it would explain some of the decisions and changes in policy. The slow pivot on Beltline Rail, for example, the stubbornness on Cop City, the Atlanta Public Safety Training Facility, and the unwillingness to even budge the door open to look at the boxes of petitions that were correctly collected. It would explain a lot of that, wouldn't it?
I think so. There's this, for all of the talk about how Democrats are the party of democracy, small d, defend the vote, the actions of a municipal leader here, especially on the petition thing, then I was telling people 2 years ago, look, this is worth 2%. The things that are going on with the petition in Atlanta and the way that the activist base is being treated right now are worth 1 or 2 points statewide, in an election.
1,000%.
Yeah. Trump was going to win.
Trump was going to win Georgia, but it did cost us votes in Georgia. And I believe that rippled outside of Atlanta and Georgia as well, because there were a lot of folks opposed to this, in Atlanta from other parts of the country as well. And you add that
there were a lot of people who were very, very burned by what happened in 2024.
You add that with the Gaza folks, and you start to see, the numbers start adding up. The trans community who feels like nobody was stepping up for them while they were being targeted by the right in their attacks, and that's another issue that I believe that the left completely fumbled from the outset. Let me do a quick reset. We're on with George Chidi from the Atlanta Objective, who, by the way, is looking for some freelance writers. So I'll make sure that his contact information is in the show notes at ronshowatl.com. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the vibe of disfavorability that the American population has with the Democratic Party right now. You've been at this a while. You've seen this from the municipal to the state to the national level. I in ways that you felt a little sympathetic with Andre Dickens on Beltline Rail a little bit, I feel a little sympathetic, just a little bit, with Democrats because they don't have the tools in their tool belt right now to do much to stop the Trump movement. But I also heard you talking about, Democrats being the party of, democracy, little d. And at the same time, we have to look at this and go, well, this is sort of their fault. 2016, we didn't really, embrace democracy at the primary level and, kind of knifed the Bernie Sanders campaign, behind the scenes. 2020, we shut down our primary system altogether and sort of coalesced behind the one candidate everybody within that room felt was the winner. And then in 2024, we didn't have a primary system either. So
yep.
I feel sorry for Democrats on some level, not the Chuck Schumer types, but some of the lesser established Democrats who are going to these town halls, and again, they don't have any power, but at the same time, the Democratic Party has a lot of culpability in this mess that we're in.
I agree. I think there needs to be a reset.
Yeah.
The irony is that Democrats had been sort of making these terrible presumptions about demography as destiny for years. Okay, look, the non-white portion of the American electorate is growing, white voters are shrinking, and so it doesn't matter what we do. Eventually, as long as people's voting habits along those lines remain the same, we'll catch up and we'll beat them, and it's a permanent situation.
Yeah.
And even now, as I talk to folks who are in the Democratic Party, rather than worrying about how to fight right now, there's this, everything's going to go to hell in a handbasket, and then they'll turn to us in 2026. This wait-and-see crap is why they've got a 27% approval rating.
Right. And the 2020 election results should tell them that it's not going to come at them in such a broad number anyway. We were in the throes of a pandemic where a man was telling us to take horse tranquilizers, and we had body bags stacked up outside of hospitals. And really, we just eked by in that presidential victory. So stop thinking that there's going to be this magnificent blue wave because folks in mass have this aha moment and realize they've been duped by this party for the last 50 years.
So on some level, yes, there's likely to be a wave election in 2026, but that doesn't contemplate the damage that happens between now and then.
Right.
And the possibility that elections themselves will be subverted given the sort of crazy crap that Trump is trying to pull right now.
Well, but also Democrats can only realistically take back the House in 2026. They're not going to take back the Senate, or at least not a filibuster.
Probably not.
Yeah, probably not, and definitely not a filibuster-proof Senate. And as we've seen before, if Trump's willing to ignore the judicial branch, and he's certainly willing to ignore one house, one chamber of the legislative branch as well. What's it matter?
Exactly. That is the question I was asking people when I was in Selma about 2 weeks ago. 60th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. And so all of the civil rights leaders are there because they're celebrating, in a manner of speaking, the day that John Lewis got his head cracked in.
Yeah.
And I'm asking them, look, at some point, Donald Trump is going to ignore a U.S. Supreme Court order. This is a predictable thing.
Yep.
What is your plan when that happens? And for the most part, I'm getting question marks in the air and not a real response. The broad thing is, we have to organize in order to be able to mobilize people, and but it's not
words.
It's words.
Word salad.
I need to hear, we will stage a strike. We'll shut down ports. We'll close businesses. We'll organize a bank run.
Yeah.
We'll block federal buildings. We'll, create disruptions that force the Republican base to do something.
Mm-hmm. More of my conversation with journalists from The Guardian, Rolling Stone, and The Atlanta Objective on Substack. George Chidi when The Ron Show returns on Progressive Voices via TuneIn.
This is The Ron Show on America One Radio.
I had the great fortune to catch up with George Chidi. He is a journalist with The Guardian, occasionally with Rolling Stone. He is the man behind The Atlanta Objective on Substack. And by the way, he's looking for freelance writing help too, so hit him up. I'll make sure he's in the show notes at ronshowatl.com. We're talking about the current climate of politics in this country, and he's covered Atlanta, and he's covered Georgia, and he's covered American and international politics. So he's got a good finger on the pulse. He knows what's happening politically, globally, locally, regionally, nationally as well. We're in this malaise in this Trump cycle where we're 2 months in, and polls don't exactly look favorably on the Trump administration, Elon Musk even worse, and the GOP in Congress is facing a deficit with a generic Democratic ballot. But is this going to move the needle? Are we looking for leaders in a current crop of Democratic names, Tim Walz, AOC, Bernie Sanders out there doing their thing? Or has that new leader yet to emerge for an answer to Donald Trump?
What I think is evident right now is that the leadership that we're all looking for isn't going to come from Congress or the Senate. Like, I don't think that a person who holds elected office right now is the person who can create the message and establish the leadership that's necessary. I think it's going to come, like, my best guess is that it comes from labor. And I'm not sure which element of labor, but I think it comes from labor.
I'm not sure labor's strong enough at this point, but
I think they're strong enough. I think it's just a question of whether or not their rank and file members are prepared for the risks that are involved. AFL-CIO, American Teachers Union, SEIU, maybe the Teamsters, they're weird, but maybe the Teamsters, I don't know. But maybe collectively as a group, like, look, the unemployment rate right now is about 4%. It's as low as it's basically ever going to get. Labor has power because when it's withdrawn, there's literally aren't enough people left in the labor pool to replace them. You couldn't replace the AFL-CIO with scabs. There aren't enough humans, especially if you're deporting people.
Right.
So this would be the moment for them to assert their economic power in order to force some big changes in how we are governed. The question is whether or not there's enough leadership and will there. That's what I'm looking at. It's what I'm looking for right now. I'm asking everybody, what's the plan? And I know how partisan I sound right now, but I'm really not. Like, I am a rule of law guy, and I don't give a damn if you're a Republican or a Democrat. I have expectations, like, about how you exercise power. I spend as much time irritating Democrats as I do Republicans as a journalist.
Yeah, welcome to the club. Yeah,
like,
awesome.
In fact, I may end up having to sue Fani Willis.
Yeah, I've been reading about that too.
Yeah, she owes me some documents. I have an open records act request she has not filled yet, and she is way overdue. And her people are giving me the stiff arm, saying, "Oh, it's coming! Oh, it's coming! Oh, it's coming!" All I ask for is budget documents. Should be the most bog standard,
benign,
non-controversial, like, should not cost you anything to produce stuff.
Maybe she just forgot what mattress it's under. I don't know. She doesn't know what mattress it's under. I don't know. I couldn't vote for her last election cycle. I didn't vote for her opponent, but I could not vote for her this last election cycle.
I get it. Look, I don't have anything against her personally.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think she's doing a reasonably good job.
Yeah. You're right. No, you're right.
As a journalist, my job is to confront authority. Are you doing the work that you're supposed to be doing? Is it cost effective? My approach to Donald Trump and the federal government and DOGE and all of the rest of that stuff is basically the same.
Yeah, show me your work.
All right, you won. Show me your work.
Yep.
And if you're not willing to talk to me about it, then you're the problem.
Yep. But
everything's on fire.
Yeah, but 1,000%, and at every level. I mean, we talked before we got on. it's really hard some days, and I do this 5 days a week, and you do this for a living. It's hard some days to get up and confront this. I made a vow when I started this show 2 years ago. I'm just going to do it. It's, no matter good or bad. And damn it, it's really bad right now. It's really hard. And I found myself telling myself, I need to focus on local stuff right now because the national stuff is just, it's too much. And I understand that there's even a little bit of an emotional rationale behind what the Trump administration is doing. They're trying to wear their opposition down and push the envelope as much as possible. And you talked about immigration numbers. We were talking about that a few minutes ago. I don't even believe that the deportation numbers are all that strong. In fact, I've seen articles that bear that out. The numbers themselves aren't all that strong. In fact, folks in cities like Dalton are like, well, we thought this was going to be a run on the town, and it really hasn't been. I think it's more about it's kind of like when you order fajitas. It's about walking it out past the dining room so everybody can look at the fajitas, but not everybody's going to order the fajitas. It's a lot of sizzle and not a whole lot of meat.
I'm gonna steal that.
Go for it.
But you're right. So I heard through the grapevine that ICE, and let me say this, ICE told a local police chief who told someone else who told me. So that's how I got this.
All right.
Like that ICE has got like a hard quota, or at least they did last month.
Yeah.
Like go find X number of people. And like there was a national number, and when you drove down into what Metro Atlanta is supposed to look like, it was like 10 or 12 people a week. 10 or 12 people a week is more than they were doing.
But it's not substantial.
But it's not a big number. It's not train carts to the border.
Yeah.
But they're going to go raid a school, and it'll get on TV, and it'll scare the hell out of everybody.
Yep.
But the numbers, at least the way they're operating right now, aren't going to be big. Aren't going to be what they were campaigning on. So, like that element of their politics has yet to be expanded, and I'm waiting for that, and I'm looking for it. And in the meanwhile, I'm spending the energy waiting for it and looking for it.
Yeah, and that's a little bit of a trap too. Sometimes we just have to, what is it? Unanswered prayers. Being grateful for unanswered prayers. Sometimes you just have to say, well, if it's not going to happen, then I'm not going to make a whole lot of noise about it because I don't want to challenge them to ramp it up either.
Yeah, I mean, but in the meanwhile, while I'm watching this, all of this other crap is going on somewhere else.
Yeah,
and so I have to make these calculations about. Okay, do I need to spend a day talking to the Ethiopian community and the Eritrean community in Stone Mountain, as opposed to talking to people at the CDC, as opposed to talking to personal care home leaders about the budget cuts that are likely to come, as opposed to going through my signal. Let me tell you. So about a month and a half ago, I was at a protest, and I stood up and I said, hey, I'm a journalist. I write for Rolling Stone and The Guardian. And if you want to leak something, here's how you can find me.
Yeah.
And somebody TikToked that, and it went viral. And 500,000 views later, I've got a Signal, which is Signal is an app that lets you communicate privately in an encrypted way.
Right.
So my signal's blowing up.
Wow.
And some of the stuff that's in there is like getting the Ring videotape mailed to you. Like I'm looking at it like, please tell me this isn't actually true. Like I'm reporting through some national security stuff right now that is complex and difficult, and you will be reading about it in pieces anyway in Rolling Stone over the next few weeks.
Nice.
But it's also devastating and horrifying. And it's like that every damn day. Like for all of the stuff that we're reading about in the news, there's a bunch of stuff that's happening that we can't get to because we don't have enough bodies to go chase it down. Because there are literally, like some of this stuff is untrue and purposefully so in order to discredit journalists for reporting on it.
Man, it's like they're playing 4D chess. And then you've got, the situation with like the classified documents case, for example, with Donald Trump. And now that he's back in power, he can scuttle and hide and bury just about any evidence that might have existed. And Judge Eileen Cannon, of course, helping with that at every turn. We just had the Georgia General Assembly just honor President Trump, the guy who sent people into the Coffee County election board to steal, voter data and software, and, which reminds me, that's another question I wanted to ask you, because I know, in fact, it's probably in your signal. There's a lot of conversation kind of bubbling undercurrent. It's almost black web stuff about the 2024 election results. Democrats, liberals, progressives, they're a little afraid to say anything out in the open about questioning the results. But are you getting any of that too? Because I'm seeing a lot of it kind of percolating.
So yes, I am getting it. Maybe half of the stuff that I got in Signal wasn't so much a leak from a federal employee, so much as a caricature by Democrats who were like, "No, Elon Musk stole the election." At the town hall on Tuesday with Nikema Williams, a woman stood up, sucked all the air out of the room, spent about 15 minutes of precious time, elaborating on her theories about how the election was stolen by Republicans. Mm-hmm. Look, I was on the Guardian. I'm going to say, I believe Donald Trump won the election legally. Mm-hmm. And I say that I was one of the Guardian's democracy reporters last year. Mm-hmm. They stood up a special unit whose job it was to examine claims being made at the time by Republicans about election integrity and election interference.
Yep.
I understand the processes about as well as any human being can. It is not possible for Donald Trump and Elon Musk to have faked a nationwide 2 to 4% shift basically in every county in the country.
Right.
It's not, you look state by state with different elections, software, different elections processes where it's just not possible. The data that we've got supports the results that we got. Mm-hmm. But there's a truther movement on the left that is absolutely emerging. It's real, and it speaks to this sort of underlying sociological phenomenon around being wrong. And there's a great book called Being Wrong. I would recommend people read it. Mm-hmm. And it's about how people react when something goes left and you're expecting it to go right. People want to create a narrative that explains error beyond just, I was wrong. Mm. People start with, they're ignorant. And then it goes to, there was a mistake. And then it goes to, there's malice. I actually have some sympathy for the truthers from the Republic. They were wrong. The truthers were wrong. They were wrong, and honestly, they were malicious. But there's this psychological quirk of assuming that surely the world isn't this screwed up. It must have been an act of malice, as opposed to people rejecting the party in power because their cost of living went up.
Yep. So something Democrats ignored, on the whole, and didn't really speak to. And poor Kamala Harris had to be the one to kind of sort of talk about it when she had 100 days to do so. Oh my God, yeah, no. I specifically say Joe Biden and Biden's handlers set her up to fail, unfortunately. And I don't know, that's sort of sad.
I mean, people need to understand, democracies around the world, every damn democracy in the world, and for the first time in 50 or 60 years. Yeah. All through their leadership out.
Yep.
In the last 2 years. Yep. Japan, South Korea, India, not India, Japan, South Korea, half of Europe, the UK, Mexico, Argentina. It didn't matter if they were left or right. They were just gone.
So my question to you then is, knowing that and seeing how Democrats are sort of internalizing and trying to figure out how to rewire the machine, or if they're speaking to the wrong people or not making the right pitch to the wrong people or the right people, are the Democrats in danger of rewiring the machine only to find out that they can't even get it cranked when they really didn't need to tinker with it that much? Or do they really? You said earlier there needs to be a reset. So I guess you answered my question earlier. What kind of reset?
Yeah, I think part of this is that there needs to, like, there are two things happening at once. One, like, there was a measurable anti-incumbent mechanism happening in this sentiment was widespread, it was worldwide, and honestly, Joe Biden and the Democratic Party suffered less for that than other places.
Yeah.
It was a lot closer here than it was in a lot of other countries. But if there's also this massive current threat that switch has created. And those are two separate things that require two separate sets of analyses that then have to mesh together. Like, I'm talking about, like, graduate level political stuff here. Like, what I've described is not easy. And it requires real coordination and meaningful leadership at the top. You have a managerial problem from a political standpoint.
Yep.
That's hard.
Oh, I mean,
and there's no damn leader.
That's easy to see. I mean, when you've got Chuck Schumer trotting out with his reading spectacles down at the base of his nose, for crying out loud, he couldn't look more out of touch. I mean, he makes Bernie Sanders look spry, and that takes some doing. And Bernie Sanders is spry, by the way, for a guy his age. He's still out there packing arenas and town halls. The thing that bothers me about Democrats is a lot of them in power right now are looking back to the center and thinking, we need to go for the Liz Cheney voters. Stop doing that. They're not coming back. They're not. The Reagan Republican or the Reagan Democrat doesn't exist anymore. They're Republicans. And trying to go back to that well again, to me, is just another recipe for failure. There is a starvation, a palpable thirst for an actual progressive strain in politics that doesn't exist right now. And the progressives are like the pretty girl that keeps asking the quarterback, the high school quarterback out, and the high school quarterback keeps holding out for some other girl, when that perfectly fine young lady that keeps asking him or wants him to ask her out, she would love him for life, and they would bear children and have a happy family. Yeah.
Look, I mean, they got to swing big, I think, my opinion.
Yeah.
Like free college, or universal health care, or
how about all of it?
Or like legal weed,
right?
Like everywhere, like big,
yes,
like big benefits to the American public,
right?
Like paid for by billionaires,
yes,
like that. Like if they do that, maybe they get enough attention. Where, I mean, you can hear the opposition campaign against it. Oh, they're a bunch of communists.
Well, we've been hearing it. But, I mean, like, the younger voter, the under 40 voter, they don't care about that crap. They don't. Socialism doesn't scare them. The communism, that word doesn't scare them. They want to be able to afford to buy a house. They want to know they're not going to be bankrupted by healthcare expenses or the insurance to avoid those expenses. That's what they want. And I think Democrats need to start realizing that, they're being afraid of their own shadow, and shadows that existed 30 years ago that don't anymore. And, thinking about thinking big, I've been saying this for a few weeks now. In Georgia, the next Democratic gubernatorial candidate, in my mind, needs to think big too. Connect the entire state, high-speed rail by 2050, or 2040 even. Make it something that is attainable. Make it something that would touch everyone in every corner of the state. And for God's sake, stop campaigning just in Metro Atlanta. Get out and see some of those rural and exurban voters.
I completely agree. Especially like, my God, like Dalton. Like Columbus area, like Savannah, Macon. Like they blew off Macon. They blew off the center part of the state.
Yeah.
And it hurt. And you could see the numbers. You could see the difference.
Yeah.
But what do you do? Like if they're not ready to, like there's a lot of infrastructure that needed to be laid that wasn't. There are meaningful criticisms on sort of a political tradecraft element to how the campaign unfolded in Georgia people didn't get paid.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there are a lot of people
Yeah.
who were working on that campaign
Yeah.
who got stiffed at the end.
And some of those people
I
were
mean-
grassroots organizers against Cop City, and it failed us in 2024. And Democrats,
Yeah, they're still talking about it.
if they could just get out of their own way, they might actually succeed.
Like, if they don't, like there needs to be some really serious, make good, communications happening, because the sort of the grassroots infrastructure that's necessary to campaign statewide has been, like, the Harris campaign broke it. And I think it may cost Ossoff his seat.
Oh,
I think that's the thing, that if Ossoff loses his seat, that's why. And it's why he spends more time outside of Metro Atlanta than in it these days.
That's true. That is true. Well, I mean, give him credit for that, because at least he's doing that. Remember the Harris Georgia bus tour? It was Savannah. It wasn't South Georgia. It was Savannah. And that, again, get out of the blue bubbles, folks. There are voters in those red counties outside the blue bubbles that you can win over if you just go meet them.
Yep, you can't just meet them. You got to work at it.
Yeah.
If the only time you're showing up is when there's an election,
on election day,
you're going
right.
to lose.
Yeah, you're right. Well, and that goes back to another conversation. I can't remember who it was that was telling me this. Like, start using this campaign money to be running issues ads now. Don't just save it up for the last 3 months of the campaign cycle when people get sick of the commercials and avoid them anyway. Use it now, man. That'll help, I think, show the American people you're trying to fight to win something now, that you're still out there putting up the good fight instead of giving us that long-ass list on Instagram of what Democrats did today. That is not moving the needle, and nobody's going to read it anyway.
Yep, this is true.
My last question to you. There's been a lot of evisceration of diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts over the last 30 years. Do you think there will be a tipping point where we see blowback 2028? Will there be enough? It's enough. You've gone too far. You don't understand. DEI actually helped women and disabled folks and veterans, not just people of color or the LGBTQ+.
Some of this is a messaging problem. Like you hear DEI and people impose their sort of internal, well, this is what they must be talking about.
Right.
DEI is about anti-desegregation. It's about anti-segregation. It's anti-discrimination.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this idea that DEI is about putting unqualified, black people in positions of power, and it's not. It's about preventing unqualified white people from getting positions of power. In
lieu of those qualified people of color or women or the LGBTQ+. No, 1,000%.
And so the way to fight that is to wave around appointments like Dan Bongino as a deputy director of the FBI, like people who are fundamentally unqualified getting jobs because their politics and their skin color are the right way.
Linda McMahon, Pete Hegseth. I mean, the list goes on.
Like, I'm looking at this thing with, like, taking Jackie Robinson's stuff off of the Department of Defense website.
Wow, yeah.
or taking a Black Medal of Honor winner. I found myself looking to see whether or not references to Jimi Hendrix's service with the 101st Airborne had been scrubbed. And they're still there. Okay. But I'm going to end up having to check after it.
Yeah, well, the Tuskegee Airmen were removed. The Iwo Jima soldier was removed. The list goes on. The dog whistles to renaming the bases back to what they were before when they were named after Confederate generals, only to find a private first class who had the same last name just to go ahead and, make the subtle wink change.
The purpose of all of this is backlash against the removal of Confederate soldiers from... this is like, well, if you're going to take those guys out, well, then we're going to take these guys out. Because plainly, a racist soldier's statue is equivalent to Jackie Robinson.
It's despicable.
Which ought to be insulting to white people.
Yep.
But we'll see. Like this, it's a messaging thing. Once it becomes once it becomes clear that this is simply about, discrimination, about making it legal to discriminate against black people, perhaps that will be the backlash. We will see.
Yeah. Well, and with enough mixed race families in this country now, just about everybody's related to somebody who is not pure of whatever, creed you want to point to. Anyway, George Chidi, I've taken enough of your time. George Chidi with the Atlanta Objective, looking for freelance writers in the metro Atlanta area. If you know someone or you are someone who is looking to do some freelance writing and has some journalism chops in you, do hit him up. I'll put his contact information in the show notes at ronshowatl.com. George, man, always a pleasure. Let's get together and do some lunch sometime.
Right.
On my treat, obviously, because you've been so available to me so often.
No
I
worries.
appreciate that. George Chidi, thanks for the conversation. I appreciate you joining the Ron Show. And to you, have a great weekend. The show airs Monday through Friday, 9 a.m., 5 p.m. on America One Radio, 11 p.m. Progressive Voices via TuneIn, and you can follow us where you podcast. It's The Ron Show. Take care.